elections ended in Kenya in August. However, court nullified the results of the elections. Now, fresh elections have been organized for October 26th. However, one of the leading candidates, Raila Odinga, is saying we cannot have elections unless there are reforms. We are here to discuss with Mr. Wanyama what is likely to happen. What is the game plan for Raila Odinga? Yeah, we've seen petitions over petitions in court about the elections in Kenya. What is your say about it?
It's not clear whether the petitions are leading or if they can be concluded before the election. There's an election headed for October 26th, and a lot of these petitions are about that. There is a former MP called Haruna Mwau who has gone to court to try and say the election should not take place without fresh nominations. But the Jubilee Party seems to insist that the election should take place. So we'll see what the courts decide this week or next week or early next week, because the election is due on 26th, which is a Thursday next week.
We see Raila Odinga went to court and the elections were nullified. But at the same time, when they organize fresh elections, he decides to withdraw from the elections. So what next for him? What does he want?
His position actually that he has not withdrawn. His position is that there will be no elections without him. Okay, what happened is he issued the Electoral Commission, the IEBC, with a list of demands. There were 18, what he calls irreducible minimums. I cannot go through all the 18, but the key among them, he wants some staff sacked from the Electoral Commission. Not the commissioners, but technical staff, including the CEO, one Chilova, and some people, somebody to do with IT, somebody to do with the election, with the computer systems and whatever. The second demand is he doesn't want the Dubai-based company Al Ghurair to print the ballot papers. And then he also doesn't want the IT company from France, Otimofo, to manage the IT system this time round. Essentially, it is those three demands. Of the 18, it is those three which have become impossible. Sacking the officials, changing the printer for the ballot papers, and changing the IT system provider. Those have provided a roadblock. That is why he pulled out of the election, saying there should be no elections until those three demands are met.
Part of what he wants is sacking some electoral officials. What's wrong with sacking them if that's what's going to produce credible elections in Kenya? Is there any problem? Is there any legal problem that they cannot sack those officials?
The implications are really not legal. They are more administrative. The IBC, they say the I in IBC is independent. There's no an independent body would be taking orders from a candidate in the election. That is, first of all, problematic. But it would also be expected that the IBC would actually remove some people who bungled the previous election, which was annulled by court. And indeed, some officials were suspended, including the head of IT called Muhati. What the chairman did, he constituted what he called a project team to manage the new election. But the project team has been rejected by Jubilee. Jubilee think they are playing to the whims. So whatever the IBC does, something that's acceptable to Jubilee, something that's unacceptable to NASA. So that's where they find themselves in. But people just can't be sacked. They can be sidelined, all right, but they couldn't be sacked outright.
Well, he has said he has withdrawn from the elections. And just after the court had annulled the elections, Uhuru said, okay, I don't agree with the court, but I respect their decision. The rest, we shall meet at the ballot. And then Odinga goes and says, okay, me, I'm not part of the election. So does his withdraw from the election, should we care? Is there any reason for us to care, or we call it a good riddance? He has gone and we continue as assuming Jubilee says we don't care, let's continue and have elections and then have a new president. He's sworn in, and should anybody care? Should any Kenyan care?
Yeah, Kenyans should care because, one, Raila has not said he's withdrawing from the election. Raila says there will be no election. Now, that is problematic for two reasons. One, their constitution provides that where there is a presidential election, the election must take place in every constituency. Now, because of that, Raila has got the capacity, or NASA has got the capacity to prevent a peaceful election in some parts of the country. You're looking at parts of Nyanza, the counties of Kisumu, Siaya, Homa Bay, and Migori. I can assure you, if Jubilee and the Electoral Commission insist on having an election on 26th, those places will look like war zones on election day. Then you're looking of places in western like Busia, Bungoma, Kakamega, and Vihiga, where there will be elections, but there will be chaotic elections and very bad turnout. The same will be in Eastern Province, that is the Cumberland, where the Raila's running mate Kalonzo Musyoka comes from. You will have very problematic elections. Some people will turn up, but you will still have extremely low turn up, some stone throwing, and then you've got the big cities of Mombasa and Nairobi. I can assure you, parts of Nairobi, at least 3 or 4 constituencies in Nairobi controlled by ODM, will not have what you can call a peaceful election. The same will be in Mombasa. The governor of Mombasa, Joho, is a very strong ODM governor. There will be chaos in Mombasa. There will be chaos in parts of Kisii and Nyamira. There will be chaos across the country on that day.
Assuming that the elections are chaotic and there is a problem, is there any legal requirement that would compel Uhuru Kenyatta to hand over power to a Speaker of Parliament like they are demanding? Is there any legal requirement? Is there any situation that would compel him to hand over power, or they are just dreaming? Is it possible?
Legally, there isn't. Legally, it looks like Uhuru would have to remain in power until another election is held. But they are not hoping to use the law. They are hoping to use the politics. So that's why they are hoping to use street demonstrations, use the courts, use all other measures. Because technically, Uhuru's term ended around about June of this year. So he's basically been in office. He was in office through the election period, which ended on August 8th. He's been in office now for almost another 2 months after that. They believe giving him another 3 months will be a little too much. So legally, I think the law is not on their side, but they are hoping to ride on some political maneuvers.
So we see Raila and NASA rejecting participation in the polls. We see them saying we cannot have elections on October 26th as the IEBC has prepared. What is their game plan? Their
game plan is to cause a situation where actually the election on 26th cannot be called an election. Because if significant constituencies, let's say over 10, Kenya has about 290 constituencies. If you have not had elections in over 30 constituencies, it will be very difficult for any court to uphold that election. And they hope at that point the country can order completely fresh elections, which would have to be held in 90 days. And I think their game plan, from what I have seen, is that they hope that at that point you can have a caretaker government, probably under Speaker of the National Assembly or anybody else. They hope they can then cause street riots to drive Uhuru out of office.
They are saying they are going to have riots. They have already started until the election day and maybe up to October 31st. Can they sustain such a street demonstration for 2 weeks, or they are just asking too much of their supporters?
Their supporters can demonstrate. We've seen this boy demonstrating for months and months. Last year they demonstrated for months until the Electoral Commission was disbanded. Kenya has got a history of demonstrations. If you look at demonstrators largely come from unemployed groups in around the urban areas, and that is sustainable. What is true is that demonstrations are hurting the economy. They are hurting the tourist industry. They are hurting the stock market. They are hurting the formal business sector more than the demonstrators. The demonstrators are in the informal sector. A lot of them can demonstrate and go back and maybe gamble, do one or two things. So the people being hurt more are the informal sector, who are actually putting now pressure on the two parties to talk.
Yes, but even, okay, assuming, okay, they have, the elections don't take place and they have more 90 days to arrange the elections, is there any possibility that they think this time Raila Odinga will win the elections, or they simply don't want Uhuru as a president?
Why the Raila people want, why the NASA team wants 90 days? They believe that they cannot go into an election now because the infrastructure which rigged them out in the last time is still in place. They hope during the 90 days there can be a process of dismantling part of that infrastructure, resetting the IT system, changing the printer of the ballots, and changing some of the electoral officials. Those are the things they want. And they think they can win a free and fair election.
Yeah, is there any invisible hand that is sponsoring these demonstrators? Because for an average person to spend 2 weeks on the streets demonstrating for the sake of Odinga or whichever politician, is there an invisible hand that is putting in money so that this person, after the street protest here, is going to have to be able to buy lunch or supper?
I don't think there's an invisible hand. What drives the demonstrators is anger. Kenya is a divided society. If you look at the last election, the election which was annulled, either way, whoever would have won, as of now we don't know who won, but it was almost a 50-50 election. So half the country has got a lot of hatred for the other half, and that is what drives the demonstrations. However, one of the backers of NASA, I can't, it's a businessman, I think he owns the big bakery. He has offered 20,000 loaves every day during the demonstrations and several bottles of water. That can give people some food, but the real driver of the demonstrations is not monetary.
So, Mr. Wanyama, tell us, where do you see Kenya in the next maybe 3 months, the next 6 months? What do we expect out of Kenya? What is going to happen? Are we going to have a new president? What is likely to happen? What do you see?
I think two things might happen. There are actually two ways to it. If the Jubilee government can force through a very chaotic, illegitimate October 26th election, they have got the capacity, both organs, using the organs of state, which basically means that you can guard every ballot box in Nyanza land with a member, and then you have what you call an election, and then hope that the courts will not annul it, and then you swear in Uhuru. He can have 4 years of a very disputed presidency. That's one way. The other way is to say you cannot have a legitimate election on October 26th. Then you sit down on the round table, have some key, meet NASA probably halfway down the road, meet a few reforms, and then hold an election early in January. And then you will have a fairly legitimate election early next year, and then you can have an acceptable president with one side begrudging each other. It might be Uhuru, it might be somebody else. But if they can go through some level of talks and have some key reforms, you can have an acceptable president, but that can only come early next year.